Okay, so chapter 8 in our textbook is about type, adding type to a poster. And if you look in the book on the starting pages of the chapter, on 237, there's a picture of the food truck flyer that we're going to be making. So you can see we're going to do a lot of different things with type. If you're looking at that inside the book, we're going to do type on a path, type in a shape, type on a closed path. We're going to split type into columns, bend it around graphics, do a lot of really cool things. So we first need to get the files, and they are in chapter 8 in your book files. And we'll go with the start file. And this is our document. We see we have 2 artboards with some lines and some graphics ready for us. Let's rename this with your name and then food truck. All right. We've kind of discussed this in Photoshop as well, that there are 2 different ways of adding type with the type tool. If you just click and put your cursor in, you're going to get point type, meaning wherever your cursor is, it's going to start typing there and push to the left or the right or center it, depending on what your alignment is. But it's just going to keep going left or right forever and ever. It's not going to wrap or fit any box. So text or point type is best for like single words or headlines when you know it's going to fit. So you can click once and start typing. Area type is the version where with the type tool you click and drag out a box first, and then your type stays inside of that box. It fits those boundaries. So the 2 different ways, one's better for a headline or a single line of type. Other one obviously is better for body copy. All right, let's make sure that we're on poster 1 and fit that into our window. And then let's go to our layers panel and make sure that we are working on the layer called text. So make sure that that's the one that is truly highlighted. That way everything we do is going to be put into that layer and not another one by accident. Grab your type tool over in the toolbar. And once you get that activated, your cursor should change into an insertion point. We're just going to click once somewhere like in the middle of our document. And if you want to zoom in on that to see what's going on, we have our lorem ipsum filler text. And that's a new thing to this version or maybe one version before. Usually it would just put a flashing icon and you would start typing. Now it fills it with lorem ipsum. So from here we're going to type in pi, O pi, and then do a space, and then do 1, 2, 3 cheese, and then a space, and then plus many more, exclamation point. In between the 3 of these, we're going to insert a bullet, which is a special character. To get to that, so put your cursor after pi, O pi, and then we're going to go up to the type menu, and we're going to come down to insert special character, and you see we have options. We have symbols, hyphens and dashes, and quotation marks. No, you haven't had M and N dashes yet in anything, right? You haven't heard the difference between them. That'll come next semester more in InDesign. M dashes are the longer dash, the one that kind of looks like hyphen hyphen put together. They're a long version. And an N dash is a shorter one. You can remember that M is a bigger, wider letter, so an M dash is the width of a capital M, whereas an N dash is the width of a capital N. It's a little bit smaller. So in true typography and true design, you use M dashes and N dashes, not the hyphen or hyphen hyphen, like you do in Microsoft Word or something. So they're tucked in here. And then the quotation marks, the true curly ones to get them going the right directions are in here. So up at symbols, here's where you can find your copyright symbol, trademark, there's other ways of finding this, but this is one way. We're going to insert a bullet, and we get just a circle, and then put a space after that. So from the end of pi, it should be space, bullet, space. And then the easiest thing is to just highlight those, and I do the space, bullet space, copy it. At the end of 1, 2, 3 cheese, I'm going to take away the space between that and the next saying and then paste in that space, bullet space. You can do it while you're typing too. You can just go get that special character while you're typing or come back and do it. If you're going to use it more than once, I think it's easier to place it and then just copy it and paste it over and over. All right. Let's take our selection tool and notice that this piece of text that we just typed in has the bounding box around it. Let's take the lower right bounding box and drag down and to the left and see what happens. So what's going on?
It's harder to read.
Very much. It's basically stretching it to fit whatever box we have. So if it's tall, it's stretching it out. If it's wider, it's stretching it this way. So when we enter type as point text like this, as we move our bounding box, it's going to change the size of our type. So move it around, go over to your properties panel, and it's going to be some weird number. It's going to be minus 72.19. It's not going to be an exact even number because you were stretching it visually, not typing in a number. So that's one thing about point type. Once you go to change the bounding box, it's going to stretch with it. So do an undo, Command Z, to bring it back to where it was. And we're going to fit in the window. So Command 0 to fit everything. Click away just to deselect that. So that was entering type as point type. When we had area type, that's when we drag out our bounding box first, and then our type will stay within the boundaries of that box. Unless there's too much, then it's going to warn us with a red plus sign at the bottom saying, hey, there's more type that couldn't fit in here. Don't forget about it. It's going to kind of warn us, and then we have ways of dealing with that. All right, take your type tool again, and we're actually going to go down to the bottom left part of our artboard. So if you want to zoom in on this bottom left where there's these two lines, this decorative area right here. And make sure that your Smart Guides are on before we do this next step. So under the View menu, make sure that Smart Guides is checked. If not, turn it on because we want to have a tool tip, a measuring tip show up as we do this. We're going to start right about here and we're going to drag over to about 1 inch wide and then just down to the bottom. So with your width measurement at about 1 inch, make a box in here. And again, it's filled with lorem ipsum. And we're going to type in here sat-sun, like Saturday, Sunday, space 2 p.m., space Highview Park. Notice how when our type, we didn't hit a hard return or a soft return, but when it hit the end of that box, it bumped down to the next line. Highview Park wouldn't fit, so it bumped down. Now take your selection tool. Take your bounding box at the bottom, bring it up, pull it over to the right, see what happens, pull it to the left, see what happens, kind of move your bounding box around and see how the type continues to flow. The blue version is what it will be when you let go, and the black version is what it currently is. However you've dragged it out, bring it to the point where it looks like this again, where it's Saturday, Sunday, 2 p.m. is on one line. So right now, and when we started, we had a box that was much bigger than our type that was needed. And sometimes that's no big deal. Other times, if you have a lot of other text boxes here, and maybe they overlap, it's going to get, when you click in this area, it's going to get hard to know, are you trying to select the Highview Park or something that you just did? So it's kind of nice sometimes to have your bounding box just, size to fit exactly what's there. And you can do that manually. Obviously, we could have pulled it up there and done that, but you can also do it with auto sizing. All right, the middle bottom bounding point has this little thing hanging down with a square that's colored in right there. That means that it's not set to auto sizing, but if we double click on it, it will auto make your box whatever size. So again, you drag out this big box, you fill it with type. Rather than having to go to a bounding box and drag it up and make it perfectly match, just double click on that little widget thing that's hanging down and it will auto size your bounding box to fit your type. And then it's a lot cleaner. You don't accidentally click on things that you don't mean to be clicking on. All right, pick your type tool again and put your cursor inside after the K in park. Hit enter, which is a hard return. Looks like nothing's going on. And then type Raleigh. It actually did go down. R-A-L-E-I-G-H, North Carolina. So as we add type, notice that our auto-size bounding box is growing as needed. So we don't get overset type. It just keeps growing as needed. It will scale vertically. It won't get wider. Notice that North Carolina didn't fit, but it will scale vertically to fit that. Let's delete out what we just typed in, the Raleigh, North Carolina, and we're back to our small box that's perfectly fit. All right, let's take our selection tool, and we're going to add some type to the right over here in this zone. And rather than starting from scratch, we're just going to make a copy of this Highview Park. So if we hold Option and drag to the right, remember that's making a copy of whatever it is we're dragging out. So make a Option, click and drag Saturday, Sunday over to the right. Still with our selection tool, come back to the original one on the left-hand side and double click on it. That does two things. It selects it and it switches us to the type tool. You can see that we now have a flashing cursor inside. So we didn't have to switch necessarily to the type tool. We can, with our selection tool, double click on a box and that's going to do that for us. All right, if your cursor is flashing inside, do a Command A to select everything inside there or highlight it however you'd like. And we're going to change this type to say AUG, all capitalized. And then 19th/20th. And then we're actually going to put our cursor in front of the 1 and 19th, and we're going to back up so there's no space between the G in August and the 1 in 19. It just all runs together. And then we're going to put a hard return. We're going to force it to go down a line. And to do that, you hold down the Shift key while you hit return. That pushed it down a line on purpose, a hard return, not just a soft return. Actually, that was a soft return. Sorry, not a hard. Enter is a hard return. Shift enter or shift return is a soft. So a shift, what we just did, the shift, enter, or return button on the keyboard is used to simply cause a line break, to push it down a line, whereas a hard return, when you just hit return, usually signifies the end of a paragraph and something else going on. So in a little while, we're going to learn how to format type. And any of you guys that work in Microsoft Word and write papers for other classes, I assume when you get to the end of a paragraph, what do you do to get to the next paragraph?
Enter.
Enter once or twice?
Tab one.
Return usually twice, because once gets you to the next line. If you want a gap between your paragraphs, you hit it again, right? And then maybe tabs to indent your first line. All that sort of thing we'd handle differently in typesetting and graphic design. And it's a lot nicer because how much space a return on Word is a certain amount of space depending on your font size, right? What if when we lay it out in a magazine, that return gives us this much space, but we really want this much space between paragraphs? Then what? We accomplish that in design software by not doing returns, by leaving nothing in there, but then we tell it that between paragraphs, add this much space, and we can say 6 points, 12 points, 15 points, 18 points between paragraphs. And there's only one return between a paragraph, a hard return, and it knows then to put in however much space you tell it. So, a lot easier.
Word you can set it to how much space you want.
Yeah, but it's whatever, if you see, the thing is in design, you get a lot of your documents in Word, right? If people are giving you copy for something, they give it to you in Word. What they set up in Word may not be what you want at all. So we take out those returns, whatever they were, and we do it with that space after feature, which I'll show you in a little bit. So when you get a document from somebody in Word, quite often we go through it and unformat the whole thing. Take out all the nonsense they put in and just bring it in as type and then do it ourselves. It's quite fun. All right. All right, we did that. Hit the escape key because we were in text mode, and by escaping text mode, we go back to the regular selection tool. That was a little shortcut between the two of those. So you should have your selection tool, and the bounding box of August 19th and 20th should be selected. And then look over to the right of this. There's an annotator. There's a line sticking out with a filled in dot at the end of it. A filled end indicates that it's area type, meaning we dragged and pulled out. If you want to convert it from one to the other, you can by using this button. So when you hover over that button, you see a little weird symbol there. And if we double click or single click, it's going to give us a tip. And it said something like double click to convert this. So if you double click, it converts it to area type, the kind where when we pull on it, it stretches. Whereas before, if we would have pulled on it, we would have only pulled the bounding box around. So you can switch from one to the other as needed. From this point, we're going to hold down the Shift key so that it stays proportionate, and we are going to drag this to be quite big to kind of fit this space in here. So Shift drag it, that's going to keep it proportionate, and we're not going to get skinnier or fatter or taller. We're going to get normal looking type. And out of curiosity, if you're in your properties panel, you can go and look, and I happen to stretch it to a 58.71 point size. All right, let's do a file save. And then click away to deselect everything. All right, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to import text that somebody already wrote into our Illustrator document. As of right now, Illustrator can handle a lot of different files. It can handle document, DOC, DOCX, which is the newer version of Word, RTF, plain text, Unicode, Chinese, this, that, and the other thing. Typically, you're going to get something in .doc, .docx, or .rtf, rich text format. That's what people are going to send to you. Any guesses why, if we got that document, why wouldn't we just go into it, highlight everything, copy it, and then bring it into Word, or bring it into Illustrator, make a text box and paste. Text box and paste. Seems like a logical thing to do, right? It is, it works, but the way that we're going to do it right now, where we're going to place it, is a better way of going about it for a couple of reasons, but one big one. The imported text that we bring in, by placing it instead of copying and pasting it, is going to retain all of its character and format and paragraph formatting that came before. So if you have it in Microsoft Word and you get it from somebody else and you take out all the double returns, but you like what they have bolded, you like the font that they chose, you like the paragraph styles, you like what's italic, if you do this place version, all of that comes in with it. Whereas if you copy and paste it, it's stripped down and it loses all of its formatting, and it's just a bunch of plain type. So placing it is usually a better way of going about it. So let's go to Artboard 2. And we're going to do a file, place. And don't jump beyond this window. Like normally we hit something and we instantly hit return. Hold on a second, don't jump ahead of me. Choose the L8 text, but now I want you to look down at the bottom. And again, when you guys are doing template files in Illustrator and you want it to be a photo that's, you know, dimmed out in the background, you have to remember to call it a template or it doesn't work that way. If you want to link to the file, meaning not embedded in your file, always know that Illustrator has to go find it. The link thing has to be turned on. That's pretty dangerous because then it doesn't go with your file. Notice there's one option showing right now, and it says Show Import Options. Make sure you turn that on before we move on. And then say Place. Here are your import options. We're ultimately going to go with the defaults that are here, but look what you can do. Extra carriage returns. That's when we hit Enter, Enter on our keyboard, like in Microsoft Word. If you wanted to remove them at the end of every line or between paragraphs, you could click here and it would do it for you. Also, some people hit space, 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 space instead of tab a lot. They push stuff over. So it says replace 3 or more spaces with a tab. So it can clean things up when you bring it in, which is pretty cool. So from here, we're going to say, okay. And then notice that, yep.
Just out of curiosity, does it put a marker in with those return lines or something? That's why you want to.
Say that again. Does it?
Well, again, when you take Word, you put it into other document or document folders like that, you'll see, like, it'll have a bracket or something that it puts for each one of the lines that it'll skip. I was just wondering if that's what happened with Illustrator.
I'm not entirely sure what how you're explaining that. I can't picture that. So I can't picture what you're saying. I guess I've never.
Well, it'll have like a bracket or something that for every line that was skipped.
It'll show that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no. It won't do that. No. No. I use Microsoft Word so very little. It's scary. I mean, I feel like yeah, I teach, computer stuff, but don't ask me about doing anything in Word because we don't do stuff in Word. If we have to lay out documents, we use InDesign. It's our wheelhouse. That's what we do. So anyway, notice now that we said place, we have a cursor that's loaded with type, and it's one file we loaded, so it says 1 of 1. Had we clicked on 5 files, it would have said 1 of 5. When we click, that first one would be placed. So think of photos. If you load up 5 photos, it'll say 1 of 5. The first time you click, the first photo is placed. The second time you click, 2 of 5 is placed. Then 3 of 5, 4 of 5, 5 of 5. So that's why there's that number behind there. All right, we're going to go, notice they have this aqua guideline about 1/3 of the way down on our page. We're going to use that as the top of our text, and we're going to just drag out a text box about that big down to the top of the ice cream cone, and then let go of your cursor, and it is going to fill in. Can anybody guess if there's extra type that didn't fit in the box? If you use your selection tool and look at the box, you could find out by dragging down to see if there's more, or dragging up and cut some of it off. Do that, drag it up and cut some off. Notice at the bottom right, there's a red box with a plus that's lit up. That means that there's overset type that's not fitting in this box. So you either need to make your box bigger until that goes away, or you're going to do what we're going to do in a minute, where we're going to thread it to yet another box. So make this box small enough that you do see the overset type box. You have to be able to see that red plus. So notice at the top left of this box, we also have a square down a little bit from the bounding box. That's the in port. Nothing's coming in. This isn't being threaded. This is an original starting point, but that is the in box. And then down at the bottom right is the out box. And because that has a red plus, we know we have extra type in it. Okay, take your selection tool and click on that red overset box. You'll get your icon to change when you're there. Click once, move your cursor away. Notice it's loaded with type again. Let's go down below the ice cream truck, and we're going to drag out a box down here as well. And what that did was it threaded the type. What didn't fit in this box jumps to this box. And you get your line showing that they're threaded. So it went from the out port of one to the in port of the other. Now, if we take our selection tool and go back to that top box and make it even smaller, it's going to push more down to the bottom. Or if we make it larger, it's going to suck up type from that lower box to the point where we don't even need it if we go too far. I don't know that, has anybody ever done page layout? Probably not yet, I'm guessing. So in InDesign, think about you're doing a magazine article. Think about when you're reading them. Usually 1 or 2 pages, 3 are together, and then it says, to continue reading, go to page 352, right? You're like, oh, great. Can you imagine doing a layout where if it didn't fit here, you had to copy it and manually jump to page 352 and paste it in there every time you rearranged? That'd be a nightmare, wouldn't it? Now, Illustrator is not where we do 350-page magazines, by the way, just to be clear. That's InDesign. But in InDesign, that's very real. You'd have all your pages, and if you threaded this to page 352 and you moved it up or you made your type bigger and therefore it couldn't fit, it would jump to page 352 wherever you told it to go. Pretty dang cool, right? It's a hell of a lot of work that you avoided by using threaded text. All right. Okay, so as long as you have some text above and below, we're good to move on. It doesn't matter what it looks like. So click to deselect everything. And we're going to go on to formatting type. You guys have done this already a little bit. You guys have typed in your name and made it be a different font and a different color and a different size and whatever. So this is not earth-shattering news, but we're also going to talk a little bit about your Adobe fonts, so what's included with your Creative Cloud suite. All right. Dun, dun, dun. Zoom in a little bit so that you can see this text in the center of the artboard a little bit better. Take your type tool and hover over the type up here at the top and click once. It doesn't really matter where you put your cursor, but by putting it inside of this text box, we're still in our type tool and it selected that text box. And then do a Command A. It's going to select all, and notice it was smart enough to go get the type that's threaded with it, that's below the truck. And then over in our Properties panel, so make sure you have that showing, not your Layers panel. Come down to your character, to where we have the type, and to the far right, mine says Myriad Pro, to the far right is a down arrow that says Set the Font Family. We'll click on that. And what you have showing first, if fonts is the one that's underlined up here at the top left corner, this is what is available locally on your machine. So for those of you that have been working at home and then come here and you go, where'd all my fonts go? It was a font that you had locally installed on your laptop or at home or whatever, and it's not necessarily here. So what I see is what I have available to me on this Mac right here, right now, okay? And the cool thing is as you hover over them and pull down, it's now giving you live previews, which is really helpful. That used to not be the case. So locally, here's what we have available to us. However, to the top left corner, it says Fonts and then Find More. Click on Find More. This is going to be the Adobe fonts. And this is what's available to us based on our Creative Cloud subscription. And there's just tons of stuff. So how do we go about finding this? It depends. If you know what you're looking for, you can type that in. Otherwise, we're going to go to the filters line right below here. And that very first filter we're going to click on by classification. Next semester, you guys have typography, and that's where we study type for 12 weeks. It's all we study. Type is classified by different names and historical backgrounds. So the first one is sans serif, which means without serif, so they don't have the little feet on the bottom. The next one is serif. That's the one that has the little feet on the bottom. Then we have slab serif, where the little feet are like bricks. They're the same thickness, and they tend to be a lot chunkier. We have script, flowing type. We have black letter, Gothic, old style. Monospaced, fixed width. If you guys ever knew or ever saw a typewriter, the amount of space they allowed for each letter was exactly the same. So letter M needed that whole space, but the letter I was put in the middle of it, and there was extra white space left and right. That's why when people type things up, like numbers on a typewriter, they always lined up perfectly. The columns did. Whereas in normal type, sometimes our numbers, you know, 1 is skinny, and if below it you have a 5, it's going to be thicker. That's what monospace is. Then we have handwritten or handmade, and then decorative. And then we have, do you want thin? Do you want heavyweights? Condensed? high contrast, low contrast. Here's where you can sort the Adobe fonts. So let's sort it to be just sans serif. So click on that first classification to get just sans serifs. We're going to come over here and we're going to scroll down. I hit escape to get rid of that because it was kind of covering my screen. We're going to scroll down to the letter R's. Q-R, slow down. And we're going to find Roboto. And notice that there are 12 different fonts available, and there's an arrow or a twirl open key right here. We're going to click on that to twirl it open and see all the different versions. So another thing about typography and design that's different than just Microsoft Word is all of these fonts are intentionally built to be what you want them to be. Meaning, if you want something that's medium and italic, this is the font you use, versus in Microsoft Word, you tell it to be bold and italic. All that does is add more pixels to make it darker and tip it a little. The typography designed italic is more intentional and perfect for the font. So always use the real family style if it exists. Don't hit the bold button or the italic button to do it fake. Okay? So we have all these different options. All right, the ones that we want. Roboto Light. To the right of it is the cloud. And if you click on it, it's going to say, do you want to activate this font? And you're going to say, okay, yes I do. We're going to do the same for Roboto Italic and Roboto Bold. So Roboto Italic and Roboto Bold. We're done with those 3 Robotos. We didn't want all 12, just those 3 different styles. So we're going to twirl it shut. We're going to click on this down arrow to twirl shut the Robotos again. Then right below it, we see Roboto Condensed. We're going to twirl that open, and we're going to activate Roboto Condensed Regular. Now remember, what we're looking for is the only options we're seeing here are sans serif, so we want to clear all of our filters before we move on. Up at the top right, it says clear all. Click on that, and that's going to clear out your filters of just looking for sans serif type. Now, this isn't sorted by anything. We're going to scroll down to the letter C's, and we're going to look for Colt. And we're going to see that there are 6 options within Colt. I could twirl it open and look at those. Here they are. But we actually want all 6, so it's easier to twirl it shut and then activate it as a whole family. So when just Colt is showing with 6 options, go to the right and click on the Activate button. Come on. And that'll activate those 6 fonts. We're dealing in the time of super fast internet, great connection speeds. We expect stuff to happen instantly. These fonts probably are 100% ready for you to use, but if they aren't, just be patient. Or if you're working, like maybe you live in a rural area and you have a little bit slower internet, give it a little time. Almost always, they're available in your program right away. We're in Illustrator. The next time we go back to it, these fonts should be there. Every now and then I found I have to close the program and reopen it for the fonts to show up. But they should be there, okay? So we synced them from the cloud down to our computer. All right. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. Okay. With our threaded text still selected, we want to just get back to our fonts here. And in our font option, we can just click to highlight the word. Oh, hold on. I take that back. You guys are probably still in this screen of the Find More, the font family menu. So if you aren't, click the down arrow over here and get this view. And again, if I see the fonts message, that's what's available locally. If I get Find More, that's what's available via the Adobe Creative Cloud. If I want to see just the fonts that I've downloaded, in this filter where all these icons are, the far right one is a cloud with a check, Show Activated Fonts. Click on that. And in here, I have a bunch more. I don't know that you guys will have as many, but I see Colt, and I do see all the Robatos. So all of the activated fonts, this is a smaller or more detailed view of that. As you move your cursor over, again, you start to see previews, which is very helpful. We need to twirl open the Robato menu so we can see all three of our Robatos. And we're going to choose Robato Light for this text. And because we have the threaded box selected, it's going to apply it. So we have Robato Light. Okay, let's move to poster or artboard 1. And with our selection tool, we're going to pick the August 19th, 20th down here in the bottom corner. And we're going to hold down the Shift key and we're going to select the Saturday, Sunday, 2 p.m. Highview Park. We're going to select both of those. By doing that, whatever text we apply is going to apply to all of those at once or both text boxes. In our Properties panel, we're going to click on the font name over here. And instead of searching the way we have been, we're going to start by typing in the name of the font. So we're going to type in C, and we see all the C's, O, L, and it just keeps getting more and more specific as we type. So C-O-L gives us the Colts. It's going to look for those letters anywhere in the name. So if the font name was AmeriColect, the C-O-L in there would be highlighted too. It's not like it's just the starting 3 letters. The Show Activated Fonts is still turned on as a filter. So that's why we're only seeing the Colts. Let's turn that off. And we're going to see more options show up when we're not saying just show us the ones that we've activated. So we see Apple Color, because COL is in that, and Trajan Color. All right. So we cleared that filter out. And Colt Bold is the one that we want. So click that. And then click away from the content to deselect it. Obviously, we have some font size issues going on down here. Things don't quite fit. Click to select the one that says Saturday, Sunday. If you want to zoom in a little and see it better, you can. And in our appearance or in our properties panel, we're going to change it from 12-point type to be 36-point type. And obviously, it is only as wide as it originally was, so it pushes everything down. And I need to zoom out to show you that. We now need to resize this box, so just take the bounding box and drag it up and over so it looks more like that. If 36-point is not exactly what you want, if we want 34, which we do, we can either type it in directly, or we can just go to the 2 arrows to the left of the type size and click down twice, and that takes it down to 34-point type. Make sure that it's wide enough so that both lines fit fully and you have 2 lines of type. All right, then we're going to go and we're going to double click on the August 19th, 20th, this piece over here that's too big. And by double clicking, we have our type tool. We entered into the type tool and we want to select just the 19th and 20th. We want to highlight that. So with your type tool, select or highlight 19th and 20th. And if we look over at our properties panel, you should see a funny size for this because that's one that was set as point type and we drag the box to make it bigger, so it's some random number over here. We're going to take this and make it 20 instead, which is going to be a lot smaller. Whoops, 20. And in general, our goal is to make it as wide as the letters August above it. So if that's not quite right, if you think maybe 21 looks better to me. So our goal is to visually to make 19th and 20th as wide as the AUG above it. So pick a font size that works for you. And now, because we're going to take our selection tool, and because this is point type, as we drag it, it's going to get bigger, but it's going to keep the proportions that we have. So we're going to hold down the Shift key so that it stays proportionate, and we're going to drag it to fit the size of this box a little bit better. And then maybe push it down or left or right a little to fit it inside of this area. So drag it to make it bigger and fit that size. So you could have gone in there with area type, made a box, typed in AUG, and made it the exact size that it needed to be to fill this. Or you could do point type like we did and then drag the box and make it fit. All right. We can change fonts, the color of them, by applying fills, strokes, and other effects. So with Saturday, Sunday still selected, we're going to hold down Shift and click on the August 19th, 20th also, so we get both of those selected. And we're going to change the color of them. So we're going to go over to our Properties panel. We're going to click on the Fill swatch. And you can see these are the fills, or the colors that came with this document. Do you guys remember what that triangle means in the lower right? Or what it does, if you don't remember the name of it? Yeah, those are globals. So if we edit them in the swatch panel, they edit everywhere. So click to turn those pink. And click to deselect. And save our file. All right, we're going to look at some additional character and paragraph formatting, and we're going to start with character formatting. When we do character formatting, it's affecting the individual letters and lines of text themselves. When we do paragraph formatting, it's affecting the whole paragraph itself. In other words, how much leading do you have? Is it right aligned, left aligned? Things that apply to the paragraph. Click to select the Saturday, Sunday type again. And then let's go over to our character panel, and we can see that the size of this is 34 points. And then to the right of that is the leading. If you hover over it, it says set the leading. The leading is the amount of space between the two lines. So if we take that, just for an example, I'm going to take that down to 10, which is a really obviously low number. And it didn't take it. Look at that. Because I have 34 point type with only 10 points of leading in between, they overlap. If I have 34 with 34, it gives us that much space. If I have 34 on 54 leading, it gives us even more space. So leading is the amount of space between lines in a paragraph. The amount that we want to do is 63. And again, this could be a visual thing. It could be a number that you know you want, or it can just be a visual. We now are going to drag this down a little bit so that these two things fit a little bit more nicely between the lines that are on our background layer, so that they're kind of even with the 19th, 20th to the left and the top of the August. So by adding leading here, we pushed the S in Saturday to be up towards the top of the top line in the word August. Grab your type tool and highlight PM. Let's go to our character panel on the right, and at the bottom of it we have the 3 dots for more information. If we click on that, we're going to get a character panel that has a lot more options. So it looks a lot the same. We see the same bold, we see the same font size, leading, kerning and tracking, but then all these options down here are additional. We can make it taller. Right now it's at 100%. We could make it taller. We could make it wider. Also, we have all these icons down here, and if you hover over them, you see all caps, small caps, superscript, subscript, underline, and strike through. We want to change this one to be a superscript, so the letters PM are up higher, kind of like you might see a TH on 20th, something like that. All right. Other things that are in here are tracking and kerning, and I just want to show you while we're here. Let's take our type tool and select Highview Park, just the words Highview Park. And in our character panel, click on the 3 dots for more again. And let's just look at these extra things. So this height one that I was telling you about that's at 100%, what if we made it be 150%? Do you see how it's getting taller and taller? Or we can make them smaller based on their font size. So this can give you a little bit of typographic freedom also. Same thing with the width. You can make it wider or thinner. Let's look at tracking. So that's the right-hand column, the second box down, that has VA. That's the amount of space equally between letters. So if you track something out wide, it puts, like in the case of 200 here, it's putting that much space equally between all of the letters. If you track with negative numbers, it pulls them tighter and tighter together. This can be helpful sometimes when you need to fit a word on a line and it won't fit and there's no way you can edit it down, there's no way of getting around it. Sometimes just sucking it down by -5 or -10 makes it fit, and visually the reader doesn't even notice that you did it. So it's kind of a workaround. So that is what tracking is. Kerning, just so you guys are aware of the difference, is the space between 2 letters. And letters that often need some kerning, I'm just going to continue to type in here to show you. My box is not big enough. Hold on. Okay. The letters V and A, they don't look bad in this font pairing, but if you wanted, if there's an odd gap between letters, let me maybe letter I. Because of the slabs on it, it doesn't look all that dramatic, but if you want to change the space just between 2 letter forms, you put your cursor between the 2, and then you come to the kerning option right here. This says it's already at -210, but if there's auto, there's what 0 looks like. So they've already kerned this. But look at how, that's how normally a V and an A would type out in that font. Doesn't that look awkward? Like there's a huge gap between there? So there's certain letter pairs that almost always, if they're being used in headlines, need to be kerned. I think they had it at -210. -210, yeah. So you would not go through all of your body type and look for pairs of V and A and kern them in all of your body type. That'd be ridiculous. But if your headline is the word vacancy and you have big bold letters, if you don't kern the V and the A, they're going to look awkwardly apart. There's going to be that gap there. So that's what kerning is, just between 2 letter forms. All right. We did the PM, we superscripted. Take our selection tool and let's pick the August 20th, 19th, and 20th. We're going to do an edit copy and an edit paste, a copy and a paste. So Command C, Command V is the shortcut, and that gives you a copy put in the middle of your screen. And the one that we just did, we're going to double click on it, and that's going to bring us into the type tool. And we're going to highlight all of it. And we're going to type in the word corral, C-O-R-R-A-L. And I did mean to wipe out the numbers, but I guess I didn't. So type the word corral. We're then going to move it, depending on where it landed on your page, we're going to move it up onto our document. We'll just put it up in here for now. and click away. So that was character formatting. That was things specific to some different letters. We're also going to look at paragraph formatting, which has to do with alignment and indenting. Choose Artboard 2, where we have all the threaded type. And with our type tool, we're going to click to select anywhere inside this threaded type, and Command A to select all of the type. Then come over to your Properties panel, and below the Character panel we see the Paragraph panel, and we have all the different alignments. So we have align left, center, align right, justify with the last line left, justify with the last line centered, etc., etc. We're going to choose justify with last line aligned right. So it's the second to the last option. When you justify type, you make the line of type fit equally from the left to the right border, no matter how much weird space that puts between words. It has to stretch out. And then because these other lines are too short, they can't fit the whole length, we told them to justify on the right. So they're over here on the right, which is kind of an odd look. With all that still selected, at the bottom of the paragraph panel, we also have 3 dots right to the lower right of what we just selected. So choose the 3 dots, and we're going to see more options. If you hover over them, you're going to see what they mean. A left indent, so how much do you want your first line to indent on the left? The next one over is a right indent. First line, left indent. So again, this would push, you can see how it's got everything pushed over. The little visual icon shows everything is indented from the left equally, everything from the right equally, or in this case, just the first line gets pushed in. Then we have space before paragraph, space after. Click down on this space after paragraph. This is the one I was mentioning. We're going to change this from being 0 points to being 6 points, and keep an eye on your text blocks as you hit enter. So now after every paragraph, it added 6 points of space. If we go back to that menu, the more paragraph, and we change that to a higher number just to see, let's do 25. That now puts 25 points of space between our paragraphs. So rather than hitting return, return, return to get the amount of space you want, do it this way. In InDesign next semester, do it this way. This is the preferred route. What if somebody adds a paragraph of text? The author of this article says, oh, I forgot this whole blurb. If you have it spaced out this way to fill your page, now all you do is say, you know what, 25 points of space between is way too much. If I suck that back up to 6, I now have room to add that paragraph on the page too. So it gives you some flexibility. So let's change this back to 6 points in the space after. And if you need to hide your paragraph panel, hit the escape key. Mine's already gone. From the font size, we're now going to choose 18 point. So we want this body copy to be 18 point type. It's a little bit more legible. And click away to deselect. If you still have overset type down here, don't worry about that. We'll get to that at some point. But we should have 18 point type, Roboto light. The lines are justified except for if they don't fit, then they're flush right. And save. All right, this next tool I think is pretty darn cool. It's called the Touch Type tool, and it allows you to work type a lot more intuitively with your mouse. So you can take a letter and you can spin it, nudge it, push it up, push it down with your mouse, or if you have a touch surface, so those of you that have laptops that you use with touch surfaces or iPads, you can do the, the rotate and the shrink and all that stuff using this tool. All right, let's go to Artboard 1, and let's go to our Layers panel. and turn on the background layer so that we can see some more things that are going on. And then switch back to, or if you probably don't need to switch back, but make sure that the text layer is the one that's actively still highlighted. Let's see if we can take the word corral and move it up above the cloud. Probably should have done that before we turned on the background, but either way, let's move that up here. With your selection tool, click on the word corral and go back to your properties panel, and we're going to tell this to be a lot bigger. We're going to make it be 118 point. And then drag it around, position it over here. Zoom in a little bit. We need to work on the letters in corral. And we need to get that special type tool. So go to your type tool and see if it's nested there right now by holding down the arrow key. So we have type, type on a path, and vertical type. The touch type tool isn't nested here, but it's available at the bottom of the toolbar in those 3 dots of extra tools. So we need to find it, and once you find it, you should nest it in with the existing type tools. So drop it right on top of there. So this is what it looks like. It's got like a bounding box around the letter T, and it's the touch type tool. Notice that there's a bunch of other options in here too. Area type tool, vertical area, vertical on a path. But take this touch type tool, drag it on top of, so it nests inside of your type tool. And then hit escape to close that window. Now the touch type tool should be the one that's selected. And we're going to click on the first letter R in corral. Notice how it acts differently. It's not like it has a insertion point and it's highlighted the letter R. It actually put a bounding box around it. Drag the upper right corner and watch your tooltips until it is 100, well, let's do it extreme, 155%. Notice it's just changing that one letter and the other ones are getting pushed out. But we just want to make this one a little bit bigger, 105%. Or visually you would be, picking this. So 105% makes it just a little bit bigger. Then there is a circle floating at the top of it. If you hover over that, you see our rounded arrow that's our rotate, like we're used to seeing. And we're going to rotate this to the right a negative 17 degrees. So we're going to tip that letter R. Again, if you had touch capabilities, you'd be pinching and zooming, and you'd be rotating and twisting with your fingers. And then we're going to take this letter R and we're going to drag it down a little bit. So we're changing the baseline. Do you see how it shows up baseline shift and it's showing us how much we're going down? Just make sure that it covers the brown rope below it. So you see that brown rope coming off of the food truck below it? Make sure it's covering that much of a shift. So we made it bigger, spun it, and move just that one letter, which is not something you can normally do in type. Now we're going to click on the second letter R, and we're going to drag it over to the left to tighten up this space. And notice the others are coming with it. So we're going to clean up that space. Maybe even pick the other R and pull that to the left a little to tighten it up a bit. Pretty cool feature, I think. A lot of fun you can have with that. Puts a bounding box around each individual letter, and then you can push them around and make them change size. Click to deselect, go to your selection tool so that nothing else is selected. And in your book there's a little thing that says working with glyphs, and then it tells you to go watch a movie. Well, we're not going to watch a movie, I'm just going to show it to you right now. Grab your normal type tool, so you're going to have to get back to the type tool. And somewhere where you have some blank space, drag out a text box. And let's take this just down to a more normal size. Let's do 18 point type. And just type in testing glyphs. Notice that I'm still following the right justify. I can switch that over to be the normal, align left, whatever. From here, if you ever want to put in, okay, glyphs are special characters that come with a font set. So they're specific to whatever font. So what font are we in right now? What are we working with?
Colt.
Colt. So whatever I'm going to show you now is only what came with Colt. So go up to the type menu and you see glyphs. Click on that and open this panel up, bigger and bigger and bigger. Here's the entire glyph set that comes with Colt Bold. You ever wondered how you might put some of those accent marks from different languages over type? It's a glyph. That's how you get to it. Maybe you want fractions, 1/2, 1/4. Maybe you want a copyright symbol that's not just the generic copyright symbol that Illustrator has, it's the one that matches Colt. This is where you find it. Sometimes there are letter pairs in here that are pushed together, and with one click you can get those. So let's click on copyright. I'm going to move this. So there, double clicking puts it in. So copyright C-A-T. So by double clicking, you insert them. You get all those different features. Maybe, like I said, it's the percent sign that you want, but you want it to match the Colt font. It's right here, the $sign, fractions. Glyphs are where you want to look. This is what changes something from being very amateurish to being professional graphic design. You don't just do 1\4 on your keyboard and call it good enough. If there's a glyph for the fraction 1/4, that's going to make it professional typeset, professional graphic design. Okay, any questions? So you can close the glyphs, and whatever test you just did with that, you can delete out that box as well. Let's save our file right now and take a break, and we'll come back and keep working on type.